In Europe alone, millions of people suffer from heart disease and many require intensive medical care. Cardiac insufficiency is one of the 3 most common causes of death. For years now, this serious complaint has steadily become more and more widespread, and often it goes undetected for a long time. In the worst cases, there is usually only one way to prolong life.
There was no alternative. It was either a heart transplant or an early grave.
For patients with an irreparable cardiac defect, a transplant is the last option. The heart from someone who has just died is swiftly transported to the recipient's hospital by helicopter. Hours, sometimes even minutes, can prove crucial. When the ordinary-looking cool box containing the freshly removed heart is brought into theatre, the operating team are ready and waiting. A transplant is the most problematical form of treatment for someone with serious cardiac insufficiency. Not only is the operation itself highly complex and thus dangerous, in addition to, many patients are waiting for a donor heart. There are simply too few hearts available. In intensive care units, thousands of patients with critical heart complaints are waiting for a life-saving transplant. But in a country like Germany, for example, only about 400 people a year can be given a new heart. The main reason for this is the low willingness of the general population to donate organs. So for most patients, the time spent waiting is torture. Rainer Thomas, for instance, had to wait for 7 months until a suitable heart was finally found for him. Numerous specialized hospitals could carry out more heart transplants, but despite the large-scale information campaigns that are launched, it's unlikely that we shall see a decisive improvement in the willingness to donate organs. So the dearth of donor hearts will keep many patients anxiously waiting in the queue. They have to hope for an intermediate solution. In André Vrobel's case, doctors decided to apply a bridging system. His heart complaint was diagnosed at an early stage.
I was 14 at the time and preparing for my sports certificate. One of the disciplines this involved was a 1,000-meter run. While taking part in it, I started to sweat profusely. I was pale and totally exhausted, and my heart was racing at a tremendous rate. It can happen to anyone, young or old.
André Vrobel has to come for regular checkups. Today he has a donor heart. He survived the waiting period thanks to a new bridging system. Dr. Florian Wagner from Hamburg University Hospital explains.
Assist systems used to be really large, including 2 large pump chambers. They were positioned on the abdominal wall. But today's devices can be implanted completely in the chest with just a power wire protruding through the skin.
A minor revolution. This new mini artificial heart is one of 3 types currently in use. They're much easier to implant than earlier models and give rise to far fewer complications. The new artificial heart was developed in the United States by celebrated cardiologist Michael DeBakey. The device links the cardiac apex with the aorta and thus bridges the weakened heart. One special feature of the system is the electronically powered axial pump, which can pump blood through the body at a rate of up to 10 liters per minute.
The cable can be laid flat under the skin and enabled to protrude from it by means of a small incision. The system is then connected via a plug to a unit containing a control console and 2 batteries. This life-saving unit is light and can be carried by the patient without any problem.
The mini artificial heart system costs €45,000. Designed to bridge the waiting period until a donor heart becomes available, it can give a patient a relatively independent life outside hospital for up to 5 years. In Europe's 5 biggest countries alone, more than 300,000 cases of cardiac insufficiency are diagnosed every year. It's the only major heart complaint that is on the increase. One of the main causes of cardiac insufficiency is a heart attack, as we hear from Dr. Bernward Lauer, head cardiologist at the Heart Center in Bad Berka.
Today, patients who have had a serious heart attack can be treated better and indeed kept alive more effectively than in the past. But even so, a heart attack always leads to cardiac insufficiency, because one part of the heart has necrosed and the other part is not always able to compensate. Around half of all deaths in the Western world are attributable to cardiocirculatory disease, and the proportion of these deaths resulting from cardiac insufficiency is steadily rising. There is no doubt that by the end of the 21st century, this will be the prevailing topic in cardiology.
Cardiac insufficiency can have various causes. Consisting of 2 ventricles and 2 atriums, the heart is surrounded by vessels which supply the cardiac muscle with sufficient blood. Arteriosclerosis damages the heart, but a protracted viral infection, valvular disease or arrhythmia can also result in morbid change. The Heart Center in Bad Berka is one of the most innovative heart hospitals in Germany. Surgeons here perform nearly 10,000 operations a year. In the cardiac catheter laboratory, head cardiologist Dr. Bernward Lauer is preparing to start work. Today, as is usually the case, he will be treating a patient with a cardiovascular complaint. Heavy lead aprons protect the medical team from the X-rays that are repeatedly required to monitor the operation. The aim here is to remove a constriction in a cardiac vessel by inserting a stent. The constriction is impairing the supply of blood to the cardiac muscle. Tiny lattice-like structures like this have been implanted in cardiac vessels for some time now. A minute balloon is inflated to re-widen a constriction. For some years now, stents have also been available. They are coated with special medication to ensure that the vascular walls do not close up again so quickly. The minor operation took about an hour. For the time being, the blockages have been eliminated. The patient is delighted. The treatment has considerably increased his life expectancy. In the same hospital at the same time, another patient is about to undergo a crucial operation. Rolf Könitzer has had a heart problem for many years. The 66-year-old has already been fitted with an artificial cardiac valve. Now his life-threatening cardiac arrhythmia is to be treated with a new kind of pacemaker. For Rolf, it offers a glimmer of hope.
It's great to hear that there's something new in the medical technology field which could help you a bit.
Disease to a cardiac valve has resulted in serious arrhythmia. As we hear from Dr. Lauer, until recently there was no real solution for such a complaint.
With some of these patients, one side of the heart starts to contract, and the other side only follows when the first side has already finished contracting. As a result, the blood is swung to and fro in the heart chamber and cannot be pumped out into the body. A new type of pacemaker enables this asynchronicity, this irregular heartbeat, to be counteracted and turned into a uniform heartbeat by what we call biventricular pacemaker stimulation.
The operation gets underway. First, electrodes for a new cardiac pacemaker have to be positioned at specific points in the heart. They are introduced via vascular catheters. This crucial step is the most difficult phase of the operation. As with previous pacemakers, the first electrode is introduced into the right ventricle via a blood vessel. The second electrode, and this is new, has to be inserted into the muscle of the left ventricle via the coronary vein, which is not easy to access. The third electrode is positioned in the right atrium. the actual pacemaker is unpacked. Here too, years of research and development have resulted in constant miniaturization. The electrodes inserted in the heart are now connected up to the pacemaker, the electronic control center. A specially trained member of the company which manufactured the device is always present at operations of this nature. The pacemaker is inserted under the skin, just below the collarbone. A small incision is all that's required to create sufficient space for it. It is now linked by radio with a monitoring device from the same company which manufactured the pacemaker and set exactly to the patient's needs. But the new type of pacemaker also has another life-saving function. With patients like Rolf Koenigser, there's a risk of ventricular fibrillation, a sudden malfunction of the heart that can prove fatal. So the pacemaker also incorporates what is known as a defibrillator, which in the event of ventricular fibrillation emits a life-saving electrical impulse. This causes the heart to beat normally again. The defibrillator twice has to be triggered artificially. Only then can the pacemaker be said to have been implanted successfully. After nearly 4 hours, Rolf Koenigser's operation is over. He starts to come round while he's still on the operating table. Still rather fuzzy, he asks how it all went. Erlangen, some 200 kilometers further south. This university town is one of the most important centers in Germany for medical technology. A new type of computer tomograph recently went into operation here, which surpasses all previous body scanners. It has 2 X-ray tubes which, functioning together at high speed, take pictures of great precision. This superb machine will be of special benefit in cardiac diagnosis. Professor Stefan Achenbach from Erlangen University Hospital.
The purpose of the examination is to portray the coronary vessels which lie on the surface of the heart and supply the cardiac muscle with blood. This is very difficult since the coronary vessels are small and move extremely quickly. However, the high speed of the new scanner is a great help. In this case, for example, we can see the right coronary artery running down here, and also the small side branches of the coronary vessels right through to their tips, all portrayed in extraordinary detail. Here we have the patient's left coronary artery. The coronary vessels are totally smooth, so it's quite clear that there's no blockage in them. Naturally, with diagnosis of this kind, we have to be absolutely certain there must be no lingering doubts.
The new tomograph is able to dissect the body in a wide variety of ways. Whether we are talking about the bones or just the blood vessels, it is ideal for every form of early diagnosis. A new development is also being tested at the nearby Forest Hospital in Erlangen. Heinz Bauerreis, who has a serious heart problem, is acting as a test person for a monitoring belt that's worn around the chest. The device regularly records the most important functions of the heart in the form of an electrocardiogram. If necessary, it will trigger off an alarm via radio. Dr. Max Hubmann hopes that this simple-looking monitoring belt will help solve a long-standing problem in cardiac medicine.
In Germany, sudden cardiac arrest claims about 80,000 lives every year, and over half of these deaths, of course, occur at night. And all the reanimation measures doctors are taught are no use at all if they don't notice exactly when the moment of death is approaching. So we've developed an easy-to-wear device that continuously records the electronic actions of the heart with total precision, giving us information on the decisive minutes or even seconds, and then, in a crucial situation, emits an acoustic and optical signal. This enables us to intervene before it's too late.
The recorded data are transmitted to a server via a mobile phone with Bluetooth capability. Using a specific password to protect the patient's identity, the doctor responsible can enter the internet and recall all relevant information at any time. Should a life-threatening heart problem occur, the belt automatically emits an emergency signal via the mobile phone to the doctor responsible or to the intensive care unit. The time this saves can be crucial. The belt was developed by Core Science, a small company that focuses on technology for a society with a steadily increasing number of elderly citizens. One concept is for patients in future to be monitored at home instead of in hospital. Core Science engineer Martin Brecklein.
We have to ensure that patients scarcely feel they're being monitored, because if they're at all impeded, they'll stop wearing a system. They'll then no longer have the medical security it gives them at home. So we have to find solutions which patients no longer feel. In computer terminology, we talk here of a plug-and-play system, which patients use with great reliability and thus also ensure a stream of reliable medical data.
The world of medicine is progressing at a rapid pace. How can disease be cured? Can life be prolonged? What are the prospects for the heart, the most important organ in the human body? What are researchers and the pharmaceutical industry working on? What kind of state-of-the-art treatment can heart patients expect in 5 or 10 years' time? Hamburg in northern Germany. On the campus of Eppendorf University Hospital, new research and treatment buildings are under construction. Housed in one of the adjacent older buildings is the Institute for Experimental Pharmacology. Here, researchers are working on a revolutionary project which marks a concrete investment in the future. Professor Thomas Eschenhagen heads a team of young scientists from all over the world. They're working in a particularly exciting and promising field, the production of artificial tissue, in this case the cultivation of heart muscles. For his work, Japanese scientist Hiroshi Naito needs the heart of a rat that is only a few days old. As soon as it has been removed, the heart is cut into tiny sections. Professor Eschenhagen explains.
After cutting up a heart, he isolates individual cells. This is done with the help of enzymes, in other words, protein tools which digest the connective tissue in the heart. The individual cells then fall out of the tissue bond, so to speak. In this form, they can then be used to produce our so-called artificial cardiac tissue.
The tiny heart cells are separated from the enzymes and placed in a nutritive solution. In the space of just a few days, with the bonding agent collagen, they form new tissue.
That's the fascinating aspect, that under these conditions, which after all are fairly artificial, the cells are capable on their own of forming a kind of cardiac tissue, and spontaneously it starts to beat, just like a tiny heart.
No bigger than a small coin, the heart muscles contract and expand without the help of any external power source. The muscle tissue is stretched over special measuring devices which register the strength of the contractions. The artificial tissue is excited in a special nutritive solution and tested for its reaction to different substances like adrenaline. Initially, the tissue was only intended for use in pharmacological tests, but the research team now believes that in future it could serve to help people with heart disease. The aim is to interlink sections of artificial tissue so that in a few years' time, perhaps, it could replace diseased areas in a human heart. Oberpfaffenhofen near Munich, home of the German Aerospace Center. This is Justin, a robot consisting solely of an upper body and 2 arms, with a total of 43 joints. One day, it is hoped, Justin will be able to serve as a man-made assistant in space. Justin was developed by scientists at the Institute of Robotics and Mechatronics. Research into the use of mechanical apparatus in space has also produced astonishing results for medicine. A team of scientists has developed a completely new kind of artificial heart, which in a few years' time, it's hoped, will be ready for clinical use. The project is headed by Thomas Schmid.
We see our system as something with a durability of between 5 and 10 years, which could thus represent a genuine alternative to a heart transplant.
The demands on an artificial heart are extremely high. It has to function smoothly and reliably and should react flexibly to physical pressures on the recipient. Above all, it should prove superior to its predecessors with regard to ensuring a regular blood flow in the heart, and it must prevent blood corpuscles from settling on the artificial surfaces, because later, in the form of clots, they could migrate to the brain and cause a stroke.
So we had to make quite sure right from the start that the blood flow we produce is in order, that the blood is not damaged, that no clots or deposits occur, and that the platelets are not damaged through hemolysis. In fact, we first spent up to 2 years optimizing the blood flow in the chambers. Basically, we developed completely new ventricles, which on the one hand guarantee good washing out, thus minimizing the danger of clots forming, and on the other also display a high degree of hydraulic efficiency.
Thomas Schmid and his colleagues also came up with a highly original solution to another problem. This tiny motor performs 2 operations simultaneously with a single movement of stroke. Blood is pumped out of one ventricle while at the same time the other one is filled.
When we compare our system with other pumps that are already available, there's no doubt that, because of the 2-chamber technology we developed here, we have a product advantage. This advantage lies in the fact that we can support both chambers simultaneously. At the moment, there isn't a pump of this kind on the market.
The power supply for the artificial heart has also been redesigned. There are no longer any wires or tubes protruding from the patient's body.
As a power supply, we use a very soft and flexible coil which is implanted in the abdominal cavity. Since it has no iron core, it's very light and thus ensures a high degree of comfort for the patient. Connected to this coil is an internal battery, which feeds the pump as a primary power source and guarantees the patient up to an hour of mobility. The patient wears a belt, which can also be placed over his or her clothing. Power can be transmitted from the external coil to inside the patient's body over a distance of up to 30 millimeters.
This artificial heart will be available in just a few years' time. Other research projects will take longer and some are not progressing at all. But many life-prolonging measures for the heart have already become almost routine. One fascinating aspect of science is that for many it becomes an important sheet anchor. With his donor heart, Andrei Vrobel now leads an almost normal life. But the 25-year-old knows that his heart will only last for about 10 years.
10 years is a long time and a lot can happen. Medicine is constantly developing, thank goodness. The dream, of course, is that an organ can be cultivated from the patient's own body tissue. That would be best of all.
In Bad Berka, Dr. Lauer is doing his rounds. One of the patients he's come to see is Rolf Könitzer. Considering that only yesterday he was fitted with a new kind of cardiac pacemaker and defibrillator, the 66-year-old is already looking astonishingly fit again. Könitzer is relieved that everything has gone so well. He'll soon be able to go home, where new tasks already await him.
It's not even 24 hours since my operation, and already I feel so good mentally and physically that I'm even thinking of work again.